welcome to the fourth video of the series.
Oh yeah, baby!
I made a ton of progress in this one. As you can probably tell from the video title, we hit 2 million Flux and 50 masteries. I was able to do all that in just a few days of playing, so stick around to see how I pulled that off. This is also the first episode where the recording spanned a few sessions of gaming, so the video should be much longer this time around, but hopefully still entertaining to y'all. Getting right into it, I logged on the first day to find that the mount from the last episode sold, and I did in fact make a profit on that flip. My first goal for the day was to complete all my daily adventure quests and hopefully get some locked adventure strongboxes to sell. I started off in the permafrost world, which at the time of recording this video I realized was a mistake. It turns out that the world below this one also has an adventure quest I could have done. Well, the more you know, I guess. Anyways, I quickly mined my 15 glacier shards, and luckily, the quest dropped a strongbox. The quest for the cursed veil just required me to finish a cursed skull dungeon, the ones that spawn waves of enemies. Thankfully, I didn't have to run around for too long to find a dungeon, but sadly, no box from this quest. These early quests tend to be pretty simple and straightforward, so I'm just gonna skim over them really quickly. I mined some shapestone in the desert frontier world, gathered some enchanted wood in the Fae forest, mined formicide in the candy world, and out of all these quests, only the Candoria quest dropped me a strongbox. Things got a bit more complicated when it came time for the Neon City quest. I needed to make a Luminopolis donation, so I ran around the map for a good bit of time trying to find a Luminopolis outpost, just to find out the plasmin required to make the cheapest donation was way too expensive, forcing me to drop the quests as a whole. Luckily, while I was at the outpost, I found another quest where all I had to do was mine a bit of primordial flame. So I picked it up and moved to the Jurassic Jungle world, and got really lucky to find a T-Rex right next to the spawn. It sometimes takes more than 10 minutes of running around to find a T-Rex, so I got pretty lucky there. This quest dropped me a strongbox and got my Boom Ranger to level 16. The one thing I forgot to mention earlier is that besides the potential flux you can gain from selling the locked adventuring strongboxes, these quests will also give you a solid amount of EXP. Another reason why you should try and get them done daily. Anyways, onto the Dragonfire Peaks, where the quest for this world is to collect some bleach bones. But I'm also going to try and complete the Primordial Flames quest from earlier while I'm in the Primordial world. Last but most certainly not least is the Forbidden Spires quest. This is probably the most tedious of all the adventure quests, as it requires you to collect either a fiery feather or a blue dragon skill, which randomly drops when you kill mobs from this biome. So you can get really lucky and drop one in the span of 1 or 2 dungeons, but most of the time you end up spending upwards of 10 to 15 minutes killing mobs before you get a drop. This time around I got it done in about 5 minutes. I got so excited about completing all these quests that I forgot to put up my strongboxes for sale, and moved on to the building quest line, which seemed like it would be pretty easy to complete. I'm not going to bore you guys by detailing out all the quests in this thread. They mostly consisted of crafting benches, placing them down, crafting blocks with said benches and placing those down. Really repetitive stuff. I got a bunch of free blocks and this barrel mount for it, so not too bad I guess. With that quest line out of the way, I was actually really excited to move on to the geode quest line. But my satisfaction was delayed by a while because I got confused by quest directions and took a quest from the wrong NPC. So reading this, the quest clearly stated to talk to an NPC at the entrance of the Geodan Guild Hall. But little did I know, they meant the entrance to the basement of the building and not the actual entrance. Although this does make me sound dumb, I don't really think it was my fault. So thinking I had talked to the right guy, I queued up for a public delve with the plan of cleaning up my inventory while I waited for the queue. I opened up all the boxes I hoarded since the last episode, most of which ended up being gem boxes. I didn't drop any gems better than the ones I already had, so I just loot collected all of them. I also finally got around to putting up my strong boxes for sale. I put them up for 37.5k each, or a total of 300k for all my strong boxes. So once these sell, my flux will skyrocket from 16k to 316k. This is going to be more relevant later in the video, but whilst I was sitting there waiting for the delve queue, I was kind of drooling over this quote-unquote free dragon class and class coin, but I was quickly brought back to reality by the delve loading screen. I quickly did the delve, completing the quest, but to my surprise, at the time, the exact same quest from earlier popped up again. It was at this point that I realized I had talked to the wrong guy. After a bit of troubleshooting, aka talking to every NPC in this building, I finally found who I was looking for, and the game straight away sent me into the Geode Caves. The Geode is kind of like a game in of itself within Trove, with its own kind of separate progression. There's even a whole different mastery system called Geode Mastery, which is primarily leveled up through this game mode. I personally find the slower pace and the grind of it really relaxing. This thread was rather long with a lot of quests that had me going in and out of the Geode Caves, so I'm going to cover some of the highlights from working on this quest line and show y'all some Geode gameplay. While I was in between quests, my strongboxes ended up selling, I claimed them and I was officially at 316k Flux. A lot of the quests early on was the game sending me to each of the 3 geode caves and having me gather different types of resources. So like I said earlier, just a lot of back and forth. A few quests in, I was told to upgrade my gas modules, which determined how long I could stay in the caves for. After completing that quest, the game unlocked the thumper for me. The thumper is kind of like an ore detector. You place it down and it shows you an outline of all the ore around it within a certain range, even if the ore is inside of a wall. I don't think it says anywhere in the game, but the thumper also has a chance of revealing hidden crystal nodes around you. I eventually got to this quest wanting me to help 25 cave critters, and that reminded me that the cave critters are an important aspect to geode caves, because every time you help out a critter by throwing one of these 3 things at it, they drop a lesser crystal cache, which when opened can drop some really nice rewards, as you'll see later in this episode. A bit later on, I finally got to craft the rocket boots, which is probably one of the most important geode modules. Prior to unlocking this, I had been doing all the quests with 2 jump and very low movement speed. They're going to be your main method of moving around the geode cave, and when leveled up, you're going to be blasting through the geode. When I equipped these rocket boots, geode became a lot more enjoyable. After grinding a few more quests with my fancy new boots, I finally got to unlock the Path Painter. If I remember correctly, I don't think this module is useful until it's pretty upgraded, but it's mastery nonetheless. As it turns out, I hit level 20 during my time grinding those geode quests. So a bit burnt out from geode, I decided to turn my attention back to the main quest line. This last section of the quest line was essentially introducing me to the gem forge and the different ways I can modify my gems using it. I didn't have a gem forge and didn't want to spend the gem dust on crafting one, so I ran around the hub for a bit until I found a cornerstone with gem forge in it. After altering my gems a bit, I was rewarded with a gems D ally. It's not the greatest ally, but it is a lot better than the cubes D ally that the game started me off with. At that point, I thought the questline would be over, but the game had other plans for me. Instead, I had to farm 30 fire gem boxes, which is unfortunate because the fire gem world is probably the most depressing place to farm in. I bit the bullet and did it anyways, and after upgrading a few of the gems I got from those boxes, I was rewarded with a stellar ring box, which is used because I otherwise wouldn't be able to get a stellar ring unless I spent a lot of flux on it or I leveled up my ring crafting. The ring itself wasn't the greatest, but it does give a hefty amount of power rank, and a jump from it is going to be very useful for farming dungeons. A couple quests and many dungeons later, the game gave me a class gem key. Now this is exciting because the class gem ability should give my Boom Ranger a pretty big buff. But getting the class gem will have to wait another day, as I was pretty burnt out and decided to sign off here. I woke up the next day to a golden chaos chest from the new player rewards. I ended up getting a bicycle mount from it, not the best looking mount. Remember when I told you guys a few minutes back that I was eyeing these quote unquote free rewards in the store? Well, I went ahead and made the purchase, and just like that, boom. First dragon on the account. Anyways, now that that's taken care of, we pick up where we left off and head over to the Shore of Everdark to get our first class gem. I got really lucky and was able to rally blade into a dungeon that was already underway. I let myself get carried and open up the vault to get my first class gem. According to the little description here, this should make it so that my bombs and my ultimate always spawn chickens. Could be a huge upgrade to my damage because those chickens pack a punch. And just like that, after equipping and upgrading my class gem, I got a nice little badge for my gem expertise from the questline. The questline now switched its focus to the geo top side, which has to do with crystal gear and cosmic gems. The first quest had me mining Viridium on the top side. As I was finishing the quest, a challenge came up with the Boom Ranger as one of the bonus classes, so I headed over to U8 and did the challenge. Because of the multipliers from both the bonus class and being an Uber 8, I didn't have to complete many dungeons to finish this challenge. So I was already kind of out and about, I decided to also do my daily adventures. Similarly to day 1, I missed out on the adventure from the first world because I wasn't aware I had one. So I went through all the worlds and completed the quest from it. Now back to the main quest, I finally got to crafting a crystal weapon, which is going to be a massive upgrade to my character's power. I did a few dungeons to complete the next couple quests, ended up looting both a crystal face and helmet to go with my weapon. The next few quests just had me doing more dungeons and upgrading some more crystal gear. Nothing too interesting going on there. But I did hit 10k PR at some point during all that grinding and upgrading, so cheers to that. Following that, I started getting more quests pertaining to cosmic gems, which had me excited because more gems means more of that sweet power rank. I also didn't quite take it into account earlier, but these quests also give a solid amount of gem dust. The 500 or so that you get every quest adds up pretty quick. I guess I'm a little spoiled, but I was half expecting an empowered cosmic gem from these quests. While I walked away with some gem dust, pretty disappointing. But that's it, a pretty anticlimactic end to the main quest line. But looking in the adventures menu, there was yet another quest line for me to take on. Let's call this one the Marketplace quest line. This quest consisted mostly of buying and selling items in the Trove marketplace, so I ended up doing a lot of waiting for those selling quests. Whilst waiting, I ended up deciding to unlock the Dino Tamer using the free class coin I got earlier. The idea here was that I would put any good physical gems or equipment on my Boomeranger and dump all the good magic damage ones on my Dino Tamer. Much like the Boomeranger, Dino Tamer is one of those classes in Trove I always thought was very interesting, but never actually got around to using on my main account. Whilst I was waiting on my marketplace items to sell, I did some more gathering in the Geode Caves, progressing that quest line by quite a bit. I was making steady progress on those quests until I kind of shot myself in the foot a bit. Earlier on, I had placed an egg in the incubator so that it could start hatching while I was doing other things, but now I got a special egg that hatches instantly from the quest line. But I can't use it because my incubator is already occupied and will be occupied for another 9.5 hours, meaning I will not be able to continue with the quest line until the next day. I was still waiting for the marketplace items to sell, so I decided to do some inventory sorting while I waited. Part of that sorting was opening up these lesser crystal caches, which besides giving me a good amount of crystal, also dropped 20 of these crystal pinatas. I remember these were always worth a good amount, but I had forgotten just how much. My pinatas ended up being worth 85k flux each, and with 20, I was looking at more than 1.6 million flux, which would be a huge jump from my 300k I have right now. Put the pinatas in the marketplace in 2 stacks of 10 for about 860k flux each. I don't expect these to sell instantly, so I might just leave them in there overnight. Because at this point I also remembered I forgot to do my daily gem box quest. I sadly got no log boxes from this, but I got some pretty good EXP. I was down to play for a bit, so I crafted myself some more critter treats and went down into the Geode Cave to collect some more resources, which I'm probably bound to need when I get past the quest I'm currently stuck on. Nothing too exciting happened from this point on, and I eventually got tired and logged off for the day. I woke up to my crystal pinatas finally having sold, and I was now officially at 2 million flux. I feel like for only being in episode 4, that's pretty impressive. Not to hype myself up too much or anything. Anyways, 9 hours had passed, meaning the egg I had in the incubator finally hatched, which means I could finally get past the Howlog quest. I hatched the egg and finally was able to see the next quest. The next quest was to upgrade my gas module, but short of a few gleamstone, I went into the caves to mine some more. Whilst I was in there, I figured I would also complete the daily Geode Cave quest, so I crafted up some treats and went down into the caves. I actually spent a good amount of time in the caves farming some other resources, which I figured would be useful for some more upgrading down the line. But whilst I was in the caves, I noticed that there was a challenge and the Boomeranger was one of the bonus classes. I got lucky and found a good group, so I was able to get the challenge done pretty quickly. I went ahead and quickly did my adventure quests as well, including the ones from the elemental worlds. Interestingly enough, I only got 1 strong box from this round of quest, and it ended up being on the very last of the quests. I quickly got back to working on the Geode quest, but when I finally went over to upgrade my stuff, I realized I was still somehow short of some gleamstone. I may have gone a little too ham crafting up some critter treats or something, but now that I'm rich, I can just go ahead and buy some more. The more pressing issue was my lack of metamatter, but thankfully during all the quests I did earlier, the game gave me quite a few reliquaries, which should definitely be enough for me to get all the metamatter I need for this upgrade. So I opened one up and got a whopping 5 metamatter from it, which I think is the maximum you can actually get from a reliquary. I also went ahead and bought a good amount of gleamstone. With all that, I was finally able to upgrade my gas module. And just like that, another quest line is complete, right in time for another challenge too.
Psych!
Nothing much else happened on the last day of filming. This video took a while to come out due to editing, holidays, and a few other things getting in the way. Really appreciate it if you watch all the way to the end. Subscribe for more content like this. Peace.